Right, good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's well today, and thanks for joining this session. Today we're going to be talking about product development and the ownership evolution. We've been joined by Kenney, who's Senior Product Manager at Booking.com, and we're also going to be joined by Kira and Ulyana, who are both BAs at Godel Technologies. To give you just a bit of context around who Godel Technologies are, we're a nearshore software development partner. We've got circa 1,200 people based in across Belarus and the UK. The majority of those are based in Belarus. We're headquartered in Manchester. We've got 6 development centres in Belarus. We focus on building mission critical systems and revenue generating products, which is what we've been doing for the likes of Booking.com, who we've been working with since 2016, and Compare the Market, the Trainline, many companies of that ilk. Chris is going to be able to share some insights into the evolution of our journey at Booking.com, which should hopefully be useful. How we go about supporting those types of clients is augmenting software engineering pods into those organizations, whether that be supporting new product development or augmenting into an existing product roadmap to help accelerate that. And so hopefully there'll be some good content today for you guys to kind of get involved with and pick in. We're going to be taking some questions at the end of the session, so if people want to post their questions, that'd be great. If you can just tell us who you are and who the question's addressed to, that'd be really helpful. But going to hand over to Chris now to kick off. So thanks for joining.
Thanks, Paul. So hi everybody. So as Paul mentioned, my name's Chris Kenney. I'm a senior product manager at Booking.com. I joined Booking in 2016 and worked predominantly with our commercial department to really diversify our supplier base, which is where I worked in partnership with Godel to deliver a new product to market. So the next sort of 15 minutes, I'll be talking through how we went about delivering that product, some of the challenges that we faced. So yeah, Danielle, would you like to bring the slides up for me, please? If you go to slide 3, that'd be great. Thanks. Next one, sorry, please, Danielle. Great. So what I'll try and cover in the talk is how, in partnership with Godel, we delivered a disruptive product to market. And when I mention a disruptive product, it was probably more disruptive internally than it was externally within the market. What I'll try to do is outline some of the problems that we were trying to solve, and also how we got, what the challenges were, what challenges we faced, and how we overcame them. So next slide, please. So what were the problems we were trying to solve? Great. So to give some context, the problem space. So the car rental market is dominated by mainly tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers. So there's around 500 of them worldwide. The remaining supply base is made up of what is referred to as the long tail. So there's around circa 40,000 suppliers out there that own around 30% of the world's fleet. So the tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers can't always meet the demand that rental cars and Booking.com cars have. Whereas if we, as an organisation, had access to the long tail, we potentially could meet that demand. When I joined, at that time, we were turning away several applications a day from the long tail suppliers who wanted to work with us, but the internal processes in the organisation wasn't set up to be able to support them. That was predominantly because there was a huge management burden. So a lot of our processes were built around dealing with big tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. and also so there's a lot of manual involvement in the transfer of data and the management of the data. And being able to do that at scale for much smaller suppliers just wasn't an option at that time. And also, I think there was a nervousness from some of the long tail suppliers to work with brokers. So there was a challenge there as well to be faced. So when I joined on day one of Sprint Zero, and I came in initially as the program manager, and there'd been a sort of 6 to 9 month discovery piece that had taken place, and there's very detailed technical specification that had been pulled together that outlined what we felt was needed to deliver to be able to support the long tail suppliers. And at the time, there was an awful lot of pressure to get to market quickly. We were concerned as an organisation that some of our competitors could come in and try and seize that opportunity. Also, because that 9-month period had taken place around the discovery, there was a lot of expectation internally, particularly within the leadership team, that they wanted to see this product delivered as quickly as possible to market. So there was a lot of pressure to get something out there. So second point was because of the commercial sensitivity around the project, everything was under NDA. So what that meant was we were looking to build a product that was a self-serve platform, but I wasn't actually allowed to go and talk to any of the users of that platform. So that caused us some challenges, obviously, and I'll come on to how we dealt with them shortly. Third point was around gaining wider business alignment. So at the time, rental cars was going through a lot of growth. There was a lot of work going on across multiple different areas of the business, and a product like what we were delivering touched pretty much every system across the organisation. So these teams had their own commitments under a lot of pressure, and we were coming along and trying to change their systems as well at the same time. So trying to get other teams to support the delivery of something which was against the culture of tier 1, tier 2 suppliers was challenging. And that's the fourth point around the culture. So like I say, most of the internal processes were built around dealing with tier 1, tier 2 suppliers. It was we had one-to-one relationships. Like I say, data was passed manually between teams. So again, was coming along saying actually now we're going to have to support all these smaller suppliers. There was a lot of concern around how that engagement model would work and how we would be able to deal with and manage that as an organisation. And then the final piece really was the contract type that had been agreed between ourselves and Godel. I think there was nervousness on our side. It was a big project of work, and there's been a lot of commitments made to senior management within our parent company, and we had a sort of fixed price, fixed delivery contract based around that technical specification. As I took over and started to drive the delivery, it became very clear we wanted to work in an agile way. We had an agile culture within our organisation, and there was friction between those two elements. Now, luckily, we mentioned Godel as a partner, and we were able to negotiate and agree that very quickly and come to a compromise position. But that was also a very a difficult challenge at the time. Next slide, please. Thank you. So, what did we deliver, and how did we do it? So we delivered a product to market called Marketplace by Rental Cars, and what Marketplace is a self-serve platform that allows suppliers to come to our platform, provide all the information that's needed for to put them on sale, all of the legal things, legal information that we need, all information around their fleet, their allocation, their pricing. And be able to give us that information, allow us to review that information, make sure that they are fit and proper, and that there's a company that we want to work with and they meet the expectations of our organisation. And once we're comfortable with that, we're then able to push them live onto our live platforms for customers to book against. So in order to deliver that, what we had to quickly do was we had to pull together a marketing site, so we had to sell the proposition to supply partners. We had to build the portal that allowed them to securely log on and give us all the information. There was the pricing and allocation engine, so that was the key part of the delivery, because our search engine was going to be hitting them with lots and lots of demand. So we had to basically build that on behalf of the suppliers, because a lot of the tier 1, tier 2 suppliers have that in-house. The small suppliers don't have that technical capability to be able to service search demand like we're able to give them. We need to build a commercial portal, again, for the commercial teams to be able to review that information and make sure that they were fit and proper. A help site with support function. So again, I mentioned it's self-serve. Because of the volume of suppliers that we were looking to deal with, we couldn't have a one-to-one relationship. We needed to make it as self-serve as possible and give them the support function in case they did get into some challenges and needed to raise concerns or need support with anything. We had to create an integration layer, so all the information that we were gathering in a very disciplined manner, but we had to then take that information and port that into all the internal systems, some of which were very legacy. So we needed to be able to take that information, get it into the right format, and then to push it into the systems. And then again, there was all the internal configuration needed to support that. So because of the speed to market and because of the amount of detail in that technical specification, what we did very, very quickly was boil that down to an MVP and said, right, okay, let's get to market as quickly as possible so we can start getting feedback from our users. Next slide, please. Regarding how we worked in partnership with Godel on this, so there was two teams and two slightly different models that were at play. So the first part, which we refer to as build it, so that was the part that was the standalone incubation of data that allowed the supply partners to give information and for us to check it and make sure that it was in the correct format. That was built by a team of around 20 Godel staff based in Minsk. That was where the core contract was based, and they had a full suite of people to deliver that multidiscipline team. That was I was the program manager and was able to provide them with the information, go through the stories, make sure that we were comfortable with the information and the development and how things were progressing. But there was a lot of autonomy with how that solution would be delivered. We gave some guidelines, but there's a lot of autonomy on that team. The integration team was an augmentation model, so they were supporting the internal team to take that information and then pass it through to all of our internal systems. That was a little bit more. That was more rental cars led, following our internal processes, and our teams there would develop the solutions, and the Godel team would support the development of that. So it's two very different models, but what we did do is have one shared goal that we would follow. Next slide, please. Okay, so how do we do it? So the fundamentals were, we established some good foundations around what was a clear goal and what the expectations were of each of the different teams, and we gave some guide rails that would allow people that autonomy, but without getting out of control. So we very quickly pulled together a team contract. There was a team contracts at the individual team level, but also at the program level, to make sure we all knew what was expected of each teams and what sort of the cadence of reporting and all that sort of rhythm around how we would work. We'd agreed very detailed ways of working, so it was very clear what was expected of people, and as I say, established a team rhythm. So we had all the basics of scrum of scrums, regular show and tells, regular updates between the teams to make sure that we were aligned and that expectations were being met. We had very clear quarterly objectives. So we started using OKRs very early on in the program, and that worked well, so we understood exactly whether we were on track or not. We had very clear MVP backlog. So as I mentioned, there was a detailed specification. we boiled that down, and it was very tight prioritization. If anybody wanted to try and bring in a particular feature that wasn't part of that very tight MVP, we were very hard and communicated, did lots and lots of communication with each of the different teams across the business, explaining the benefits of marketplace, why it was important, and getting that roadmap alignment very, very quickly. And that, again, we were able to cascade that back to the team so they understood the expectations and the interdependencies between the pieces of work that they were doing, and how that would affect delivery if something wasn't delivered on time or wasn't done to a particular standard or in a certain way. Visualization of progress. So again, we had a visualization of the board milestones, how we were doing, the KPIs of the project, and how we to make sure we knew we were on track. And then I suppose the other part is the self-trusting environment. So we treated ourselves as one team. We didn't see it as a Godel team and a rental cars team. We were a partnership. We worked together. We were one team, and it helps us all come together to deliver on the goals. From a wider perspective, as I mentioned, that wider roadmap alignment was critical, because so many different parts of the organisation had to change in order to bring this to life. And that was challenging. There was, we had to compromise on our requirements quite a lot. Some things that we thought were really important, challenge ourselves, or actually was it really important, and actually could we live with something, could we live with a tactical process, learn from that once we got live, and then refine it at a later date. And some of those processes that we agreed, which we didn't think were going to be ideal, are still in place today because they've worked and they've not required any change. I mentioned about marketing. So towards the end of the project, we built a marketing site, which was done outside the Godel model. But what it allowed us to do is have very clear target market for who we were going to go to with our MVP. And when we initially launched, we launched just in the UK, but we could quickly, once we knew that we had a product that could get to market and we could start iterating on and being publicising, we were able to get this in front of users and start getting that feedback and checking our hypotheses were correct and whether any of them were wrong, and therefore we could iterate that on that and get that feedback loop moving very, very quickly, which we did. Next slide, please. And the end result, we delivered marketplace. So screenshot on the left is a supplier portal. It's sort of showing quite a simple design. So that was one of the things that we had to do. Because we couldn't speak to supplier partners, we very early made with my UX guy, we made a very clear decision to keep the UI as simple as possible. Let's not overcomplicate it. So we went with a very simple design, but it worked, and we've had very little challenges around the usability of the application. Again, we also had to build the internal portal, the help center, and the marketing proposition site. All of that went live within a 12-month period. And it's still live today, and we launched in the UK initially back in October 2017. We're now live in 89 different countries. It's a bilingual site, and we're looking to go into more. And that's it from me. So I will hand over to Kira. Thank you.
Hello. So yeah, I'm Kira. I'm going to tell you about marketplace evolution from the team perspective, I would say. So it will be more team focused rather than the product focus, as Chris was telling about it. So Daniel, could you bring the slides, please? And go to the next slide. Okay, so meanwhile, I'm going to introduce myself. So I'm Navitskaya. I'm with Godel since 2016, and I started as a business analyst on the marketplace project. Then I, evolutionated it to the Scrum Master, and from August 2018, I'm become a product manager, and this is pretty much the role which I'm playing now. So next slide, please. I will tell you how everything started. So at the beginning, what we have. It started in June 2016, as Chris mentioned, and we started with a team on the Godel side. It was a team only with 4 people, and we have the idea what we want to build, and we have this quite detailed specification, but this was pretty much what we had. And it took us a year, as again Chris said, that to deliver what we actually delivered. It is pretty much the supplier portal, it's a commercial portal, including all the integration with all the internal rental car systems, which was quite challenging, and the help center and the marketing proposition side. So it was quite a lot, I would say. And again, yeah, the team was ramped up a bit, and at some point we had 2 teams with 20 people from Godel side working on it. The next slide, please. So for now, what we have now, now we have the team which is spread across between UK and Belarus. So we have the tech lead engineer on the rental car side. He's based in Manchester. Then we have the team of 5 in Grodno, Belarus. It's a development team, and we have a product manager, which is me, and I'm based in Manchester. The next slide, please. For these 4 years, we faced quite a lot of significant changes, I would say, and I wanted to tell you about it because they were definitely influencing the team and the dynamic comparison. So the first thing that the team has been renewed 4 times, so we had to start with completely new people on the team with completely new teams 4 times. This decision has been made due to different circumstances, and yeah, but this was quite challenging for us, and each time the team was based in Belarus, then the whole team was based in Manchester, then the team was spread between Manchester and Belarus, so it was a distributed team, and it was quite challenging, I would say. The next bit, which again influenced us, was the lead engineer change as well. So we faced three times within the 4 years. I would say it's quite remarkable as well, and it changed the dynamic of the team. And again, you know that the lead engineer plays quite an important role within the team, and it's changing quite a lot of things. And then we faced the keeping the lights on mode, which is quite an interesting thing. The keeping the lights on mode means that nobody is expecting any features, any changes from you within the quarter. So again, it has been done due to different circumstances and the decisions at the higher level and everything. But for the team itself, it was quite, how to say, frustrated a bit because again, people want to deliver stuff, and nevertheless, the marketplace team, even in this weird mode, we managed to get feature out of the door, which was quite remarkable as well, I would say. The next slide, please. I wanted to tell you about the main challenges which we faced. So as I said, yeah, the team started marketplace from the scratch. So we had just this specification, which was quite detailed, but still on one side, starting from scratch for fresh, it's quite easy and you could build for whatever you want and everything. But on the other hand, it's quite challenging as well because there is nothing, there is no processes, no infrastructure, no communication plan, nothing. And we had to build it from scratch. And I think we were quite successful in it. And we built everything pretty much starting from the communication, because the communication was the key here, and then until the deployment process. So yeah, I think it was quite a challenge for the marketplace team. Then the next bit, as Chris mentioned, it was the integration with pretty much all internal rental car systems. It was quite challenging because, as you know, the integration projects are quite tricky usually, and you need to digest what the other teams are digesting, and it was quite tricky, and because we had quite a few integrations to make, so I would say it was a challenge as well. But then we have the distributed team, which is again, it distributed between different countries, so it obviously quite challenging. And for now, yeah, we have this COVID environment, and now pretty much everybody facing these challenges. But I think that having Godel experience of working like across different countries, different offices and everything, it was quite helpful, and I think that's one of the things why the marketplace was quite a successful project for us. And the last bit which I wanted to talk about is startup attitude. As Chris mentioned, the marketplace was treated as a small startup within the big organization, and it was quite challenging because the other teams have different attitude, different problems, different backlogs and everything. So putting everything in line and like really try to deliver something within this environment was quite tricky. Next slide, please. So I want to tell you how we actually overcome those challenges and why and how it makes possible. So I think this is the three main things what made Marketplace successful. The first thing was that the team bought the idea of the Marketplace, and each time when we started within the new team, 4 times pretty much, we tried to sell this idea to the guys, and they bought it, and that's why they started to care about the customers, about the product, and that's why they started to want to deliver something and really was quite passionate about it. Then the next bit is obviously the agile team. We tried to build a self-organized and self-sufficient team which shares responsibilities and we actually keeping focus on the customers and the product and like sharing these responsibilities so team will deliver what they need to deliver. And the last bit, which was again I think very, very important, is focus on the result. So we wanted to bring the value to the customer as soon as possible. So our team was very self-sufficient, very responsible, very focused on the result, and they know that they want to help their customers, their users. They literally they crave for it, and I think that's why that's what made Marketplace quite a successful project. So again, as Chris mentioned, we have the very, very close team of working together. So we don't have just a development team working in isolation. We have the business owner, we have product owner, we have Scrum Master, we have the development team, which were working as a one team and we're pulling in one direction. So that's why I think the Marketplace was quite a successful project, and that's why I wanted to share this experience with you. So this is it from me, and hand over to Juliana, who will tell you about the product ownership.
Thank you, Kira. Hello, I'm Ulyana. I've been working on booking engagement for more than 2 years now. Same as Kira, initially as a business analyst, but eventually became a product manager. Next slide, if possible. Yeah. So as my own role evolves, my team also followed its bumpy road of transformation from augmentation to dedicated delivery team, and finally to a product team. And it's the second leap that I want to talk about today. Obviously, transition like this doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual evolution. But for the sake of time, I will oversimplify and talk only through major milestones on this journey and some key enablers that help the team to get in control of what, how, and whys of their work and product. Next slide. Well, I recognize that it being a different product and what's been not in our favor, it might have been a completely other story. So to give you a bit of a context on the product part that we are working on. So unlike Chris and Kira, me and my team are in charge of the end user facing part of the product, namely booking management experience for car hire on booking.com, which means that our product should meet the needs of all the booking.com users, not just requirements of certain business stakeholders. And second, Booking as a company encourages data-driven decision-making and relies on experimentation and A/B testing, which for us means that regardless of who is the author of particular product hypothesis, it's data and metrics that will lead to a final verdict, whether it was good or bad idea, or whether it contributes to our goal, which is simpler to everyone to contribute. Next slide. So where did we begin our project? So we kicked off the project with a regular remote team, which usually comes with its strengths and weaknesses. And among the strengths, we can name strong focus on delivering working software and adherence to estimations and timelines. At the same time, remote teams are often known for lack of business domain knowledge, for lack of knowledge on user needs or empathy towards them, and in general share more project versus product mindset with the focus on time, scope, and system and development, rather than cutting costs or generating revenue for the business. Next slide. So the first major shift from this project mindset happened with the team's adaptation of ideation sessions, which proved that the team itself can shape its roadmap, the what's of their work. So how did it work? Essentially, the entire delivery team came together equipped by a clear goal, and a clear goal is a key here, system knowledge and some basic knowledge on user behavior patterns, and started generating ideas of what we can do short-term and long-term within our product to achieve our goal, and at the time it was to reduce cancellation rate for car hire bookings. So we discussed the ideas, each voted for the best ones, and we agreed to validate top voted ideas as hypotheses. And it was quite a revelation to the team that their knowledge of the product can lead to a valuable product hypothesis, and it definitely boosted teams' morale to see their own ideas implemented in the next quarter. Next slide, please. Next step was challenging a very common misconception of remote teams, that it's only product managers and UX researchers or designers who are in charge of defining user experience, which we did through our first ever design sprint. Design sprint is a common tool. In a nutshell, it's just a time-boxed process of validating ideas and solving challenges through rapid prototyping, when a team of experts from different fields, in our case it was delivery team, data analyst, UX designer, and guest star product director, take time to assess the problem, sketch potential solutions, decide on them, and get a testable prototype. And that's exactly what we did. It was the only twist that we had 2 problems to assess and 2 mixed teams. So in our experience, design sprints proved to be especially applicable and useful for the remote teams, as the time the delivery team can spend with other stakeholders in one location is naturally time-boxed. And it was indeed a rare opportunity for the team to get first-hand insights on user behavior from data analysts, or observe how UX designer is approaching the problem, or get steer and guidance from product director, and at the same time be equally contributing to the solution. Next slide. And the third milestone, conquering the why, associates with the unlocking the possibility for the team to set their objectives and key results themselves. It took us almost 2 years to get to this milestone, and before this we had to check several imaginary checkboxes, as they all had to be factored into objectives and key result setting. And those checkboxes were: do we know and are we in line with the company's strategic vision? Do we know our own users' main pain points, their impact, and do we address them with our objectives? Do we know how we'll measure the progress towards these objectives? Do we know what results we can realistically achieve and what's our execution plan? And last, which comes from working together for some time as one team all together, do we know our own team's strengths and limitations, and does the plan take them into account? So, next slide. From all of these lessons, some advice to product manager or anyone in charge of the team who wishes to foster product mindset within their team. First would be definitely to set clear and inspiring vision to the team and make sure that it's very well communicated. Set clear rules of how the success will be measured and provide the team with the tool to monitor progress towards it. Next would be to get the team access to as much data as possible, especially on user behavior, so that they can generate their own product hypothesis. And also provide the team with a simple mechanism to share their product ideas and get feedback on them. And the ideation session from before is one example of this. Also, quite a tricky one is to trust your team, and sometimes it means just to get off the way so that they can do the job themselves and figure out the solution themselves. Also, you would need to be very patient. You won't get buy-in from everyone in the team to change their mindset overnight, and that's fine. We can allow everyone to process this on their own pace. And last is care on all levels about the users, product, and team itself, because you definitely cannot expect it from the team if you are not setting an example. So, next slide, please. Was it worth it? As a product manager, I say confident yes. as having passed this winding road, I see a different team in front of me now, much more enthusiastic and engaged, as having purpose and autonomy and trust clearly motivates people. And for me, as a product manager, it means that with each team member being an expert in a product to some extent, I can rely on them more and delegate more, which saves me time for low-level decision-making and task management, and I can focus on strategy and user needs instead. That's all from me. Now I guess to David for questions.
Thanks, Ulyana. Thanks, Chris and Kira. So some really, I suppose, some useful content shared there, and certainly some discussion points that's driving. And thanks for everyone who's sharing questions in the group as well. So I think we've got quite a few to get through, and we'll field as many as we can in the time that we've got left. I think I'll start with the first one that's come from Yannick, and I think that's actually directed at Chris. So the question there, Chris, is, I suppose, what was your approach to align the roadmap with the wider teams, especially as you had like an agile approach and you had to iterate as you went through?
Okay, yeah. So I suppose really the main approach was, it was a lot of communication. So constantly talking to each of the different product teams, trying to understand what was on their roadmap. I also I went to them with my expectations of what was needed and when I needed it in order to be able to bring together my plan. So but the main part was around communication. So where there was misalignment, there would be a negotiation, just trying to see if there's anything we could do, and invariably that meant that would mean that something else would have to get dropped from that particular product team. That would then, we'd need to lean on our steering committees, our steering board, which had, we had the senior members of across all parts of the organisation as part of that steering board, because we knew it was such a cross-cutting delivery. So having that steering board that were empowered to make calls and make prioritisation decisions and to support that was key. So first pass was always try and resolve something at a peer level by having that communication, talking them through the background of the project, why it was important, where that didn't succeed, which from time to time it didn't, then it was explained to them, right, okay, I now need to take this up the line because someone at a higher level needs to make a call, and the trade-offs between the different pieces. So that's kind of how we do it, but communication, absolutely key.
Fantastic. I think this might feed into that kind of answer as well. There's another one that's come in, which sounds like it's directed at yourself as well, in terms of what specifically kind of what change did you instill at Booking.com and across the teams when perhaps starting out on that product journey?
So maybe I'm not the best person to speak on this, but when we started Marketplace, we didn't have a products organisation specifically. There was a products commercial, but that was predominantly a commercial department. The product as a department has evolved over the last 3 years. What has started to happen, there's a lot more focus on OKRs, and they are filtered down from the top of the organisation all the way through. There's a lot of focus on user needs and making sure that we are delivering, solving actual problems. What are the problems we're trying to solve, and what are the actual user needs? So we're not just delivering stuff because somebody's asked for it, making sure that we can trace it back and we can show that we've demonstrated that the benefit of that particular change. So there's a lot more focus on user needs, outcomes, making sure we have very clear aligned roadmaps, and everything leads back up to the overall company objectives and the overall OKRs. So they're the sort of fundamental changes that have taken place in the last few years.
Fantastic. And I suppose one of the other questions we've got further down is, I suppose it ties to that one quite nicely in terms of how broad were the ideation sessions? There's a question here about in terms of attendance, stakeholders, development team, did UX get involved, QA, marketing, what did that kind of look like?
I can talk from a marketplace perspective. I think Juliana can also talk from her perspective. Whenever we did it in marketplace, one of the things that we tried to do in marketplace was we treated ourselves as a complete product. So what I mean by that is we had the commercial teams the development teams, the product teams, we all had one set of OKRs, one set of objectives. We were all one team. It never had a feeling of having different departments. So whenever we did do these ideation sessions, everybody was involved from that department, from our area, because we needed to make sure we had all the different perspectives in there. So UX were absolutely fundamental to how Marketplace was delivered, because, as I mentioned, it was a self-service platform and we had to make sure we were doing something that was usable and easy for somebody to use. So, you know, we had testing in there. We would pull in different specialists had and when we need it. So if we were doing a particular piece that required some security, we may pull in a security person into that conversation. So I think it depends on the type of problem you're trying to solve. Would be my view.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chris. I suppose one of the ones, it's a couple of questions that kind of talk to this one as well, in terms of, did you find any, I suppose, cultural differences, either benefits or challenges, from working with developers not in the UK and specifically in Belarus compared to perhaps those you have internally?
There's always challenges when you've got people working remotely from each other, and as I think we're all facing at the moment. I think the bit that worked really well was when we made the effort to go and spend time in Belarus. The guys in Belarus spent time with us, and anything that you can do to build that relationship, and for the guys coming to us really appreciated understanding the context of our environment and seeing what was, speaking to people face to face, understanding our culture, and the same vice versa. So that cannot be underestimated. That having that time together, working together. I think the other part that we did quite a lot of is make sure we were using video conference. It wasn't a faceless communication. So again, that just really helped to build the relationship, and also we making sure that the team were involved in all of the decisions. So it didn't feel like we were just saying to them, right, go off, implement this. It was, they were part of the process. They were absolutely integral to it, and therefore that really helped. There were some challenges around communication. There were some cultural challenges. We're a very diverse organisation, and there were some challenges at times. If we saw that it was a problem, we addressed it. So whether it be some of the Godel guys had specific English lessons, and we factored that into the delivery. Also, like from my perspective, I would try and speak more slowly, because I can talk quite quickly, and the team, that was feedback from the team to me, and I would make sure I addressed it and try to acknowledge it as well. So again, it just comes down to communication. Communication is absolutely key, and the more you can do, the more you can get the teams understanding each other's cultures, the better.
Fantastic, thanks, Chris. This other one's probably focused on more around kind of estimation within the teams. It's coming around, I suppose, how did you tackle that estimation within the teams and align it to perhaps to the wider roadmap? And did your roadmap provide kind of detailed delivery timelines off the back of that?
So when I took over the project from at the beginning of Sprint Zero, the technical specification, as part of the bidding process that Godel had gone through, they had estimated pretty much every single story. So we had a very clear understanding of how long they felt each piece would take, based on the team and based on the complexity of the change. We followed some. Nothing's rocket science. We followed some basics. We did Scrum. We tracked what our velocity was. We understood how the estimates that we were getting, how accurate were they based on what we were trying to do, and from that we were able to use that to drive relative sizing of other pieces of work in the roadmap. So that was we did that quite quickly. Regarding a wider roadmap alignment, there was, once we started and we started getting a view of velocity, it gave me more confidence to be able to go and say, right, actually, we need you to do this change. And what we sometimes had to do is we may have to stub out some of the connections between the different systems, so that I could get an internal team to build something. We would build something very basic just to start making sure we could pass information, and then we would iterate over that over a period of time. So we try to de-risk all of those connectivities and them integrations as quickly as possible, and then we layered on top of that as and when we needed to. We did have a roadmap. It wasn't on this specific date. It was more by this point in this quarter we expect to be at this point. So I've used transformation maps quite a lot, and we had a transformation map where we said at certain points we knew exactly where we were trying to get to and what problems we should have solved by that point. So that's kind of how we did it. It was quite fluid, but yeah.
Brilliant. We've got a question here from Will. I think this is actually directed at Kira. So someone's around, what was the most difficult integration that you found, Kira, and what method ultimately did you use to kind of tackle that?
So yeah, as I mentioned, there were quite a few integrations with the marketplace project and internal systems, but I would say the integration with one of the systems when we pass pretty much all the information from the marketplace to the internal rental car system was the crucial bit, because as Chris mentioned, marketplace was kind of an incubator for the data of suppliers to pass it to the rental car side. So it was quite crucial to make this integration right and to literally pass everything correctly and like in a proper way. So it was a data integration, I would say. And the approach which we were using the communication, obviously, because we were communicating closely to the team and trying to understand what they're expecting in what way, how we're going to build it. Again, we have the lead engineers talking together and trying to design the API which will pass this information through, and yeah, so that's how we done it.
Thanks, Kira. We've still got a couple of questions coming through, so if people are still able to hang on, I can see we've still got over 100 people with us at the moment, which is fantastic. We've got another question here from Will, directed at yourself, Chris, which is, I suppose you mentioned about the cost structure was changed kind of early on to kind of agile charging. Was there any challenges from a, I suppose, management perspective about kind of controlling budget, and how was that kind of communicated around the kind of project cost versus ROI?
So from the way that we did it was we sort of said, right, actually, look, we've got a set amount of budget. We can't have. I think what we were trying to achieve was fixed cost, fixed scope, fixed date, and you can't, if all 3 points of the triangle are fixed, it's impossible. So we very quickly were able to evidence that, look, let's try and stick with, we'll have a fixed price, we'll have a so it was a resource cost. We knew how many people, we knew what their run rate was, therefore it was very easy for me to predict how much we were going to spend. I could, we could have some relative commitment on date because we sort of said, right, we know we're going to launch by this point, and actually we were able to launch, try and bring that forward. The bit that I changed to be flexible was the scope. So as I say, I took a very detailed specification and boiled that down to let's deliver this as an MVP. And once we got everybody aligned on that, and there was an addendum to the contract to make sure that everyone was comfortable. And once that was done, we knew that this wasn't just one piece of work and everyone was going to go off the project. It was going to be an ongoing engagement, and that just basically allowed everybody to settle in and start delivering a case against that MVP. Once the MVP launched, the return on investment stayed the same. We were able to get something that was usable, and with some support processes in place, we're able to support areas where we weren't able to deliver a self-service piece of functionality, but we were able to get to market. So the ROI stayed the same, and the only bit that flexed was, to some extent, was the user experience or the ability for them to self-serve versus us doing certain parts. And we absorbed that within the team without any issue.
Fantastic. We've got one here from Andrew Dutton from Senior PO from Music Magpie. Was the team, looks like it's directly at yourself, Chris, was the team dedicated to just working on this initiative in isolation, or were they also picking up a variety of other kind of tasks at the same time?
No, they were dedicated just for marketplace. So we had the two teams and completely dedicated. So there wasn't anything else they were working on. It is quite a diverse. As I mentioned, we've got an internal portal, an externally facing portal. We have an integration layer. We also have, to the point around challenges, integration challenges. We have to integrate into our financial systems to be able to do all of our financial reporting and make sure that everything is reconciled correctly. We have to pay out through a third party using virtual credit card, all the challenges and the security challenges around that. So to me, that was a bigger integration challenge than some of the internal ones. They would work on just marketplace, but that was quite a diverse set of features and systems to support.
Fantastic. We've got another one in here from Neil around, I think specifically on, I suppose, outcomes. So I suppose, did you hit your targets within the OKR, and what was the outcome of that with the stakeholders in the business?
We did not always, at times, we were, myself and my boss, who was like the director and the main sponsor for this piece of work, we're both quite driven, we're both quite ambitious, and we were relatively new to OKRs came in partway through delivery of this as an organisation, but we were at times we overstretched ourselves, and we quite quickly learn, trying to get that right balance is difficult, and some, you've kind of got to stretch yourself, otherwise you just coast along, and so no, we didn't always meet the objectives. Regarding how that was received, I think fundamentally, if you set yourselves a set of targets and then you don't meet them, you have to justify why you've not met them. And again, it just comes back to that regular reporting of progress. We constantly have to report on our OKRs and how we're doing against them. And it's just that making sure that you've got a good narrative around what's happening, why certain things are taking place, and just being open and transparent, which I sort of alluded to before around visualization. We try to visualize performance, what our KPIs are and how we're doing, so it's very clear to people how we're performing. Now, at times we've underperformed, or other times we've smashed targets and done really well. So it's been a mixed bag, if I'm honest. I think the key part is, just that transparency around why you're performing against, or better or worse against, targets.
It almost kind of talks about managing expectations, both positive and negative, as early as possible, I suppose. Yeah. I suppose we've got a few minutes left and a couple kind of other questions coming through, and thanks again to everyone that stayed on. We've got a question here from James directly at yourself, Chris, which is, I suppose, how did you avoid almost like an us and them culture with Booking.com, the internal team, and that with integrating with the team like Godel, and perhaps them not being seen as a threat? It's mentioned that perhaps working with other partners, that's always been a challenge for James in the past. How did you find that and potentially overcome it?
I think within our particular team, it just wasn't even on the agenda. It was never an issue. We were, and maybe that's partly down to the individuals that were in play, but we built a very good relationship with the team in Godel, and as I say, we saw as partners. We saw, Kira has been in Manchester. I've kind of line managed Kira on a day-to-day basis. She's been, we've been part of one team. So we never see that Godel Booking.com split. It's just, like I say, it's just never been on the table. And I think part of that is, we remove the restrictions around the contract help that. So when it was a time, when there's penalties involved if you don't hit certain delivery, that can help to drive that sort of culture, I think. That's a personal opinion. Whereas when both sides of both parties accepted that this was, we are going to deliver together on this commitment and this goal, and we've just worked together. So it's always been one team. Regarding the wider team, I think wider Booking, I've not been made aware of any issues with any of the augmentations that we've got. I think marketplace at times, because we were an internal startup, because we were disruptive, there was sometimes a little bit of friction between the rest of the business and us, but that was nothing to do with Godel. That was because we were seen as a bit of an outlier within the rest of the organisation and the rest of the culture. So that caused me some challenges, but I don't think there was anything specifically to being Godel.
Understood. No, appreciate the feedback there. I think we've got another one here as well from Neil, which is I suppose directed at either Kira or Ulyana in terms of, I suppose when that feature set was largely defined in the MVP, how did you go about kind of driving autonomy and ownership of the client or the business outcomes from the team, but without it kind of resorting to just kind of time or cost? So happy for either of you who'd like to pick that one up.
Juliana, will you, or should you? I mean, should I do it? Okay, anyway, I'll try to explain it from the marketplace perspective.
Sure.
Indeed. So within the marketplace, as I said, the team brought in the idea of the marketplace behind the marketplace. So yeah, nevertheless, we have the quite tight scope of the features for the MVP. The team understood why we need to deliver them and how we need to deliver them in the way. So they were quite, how to say, and they are still quite mature in this term, and they took the full responsibility for those features, and that actually client focusing thing was driving them very hardly towards the goal. So I would say, yeah, the bought-in idea, this was a crucial bit from the marketplace perspective.
Thanks, Kira. I suppose we've got a couple of minutes left, so I suppose the final question, which a question here to Chris, from, I suppose the question here is, do you understand that was the product ownership and the product management passed to Godel, and if so, was that not seen as a risk from the business?
So no, it wasn't. The product ownership sat firmly with me. So I had sort of two hats. I was program manager, but I was also product owner. And as I mentioned, the director who was sort of driving the overall the business case and who was responsible for the commercial benefits was also heavily involved. So between us, we were acting as the sort of product owners. So it was very much driven from rentalcarsbooking.com. I know we mentioned now Kira is acting as the PO day to day, but that's under a senior product manager like myself, guidance. So and part of the, the great benefit of having of Kira on board is, one, she obviously understands the context of our organisation. It helps, sometimes trying to get something over in English might be a bit of a challenge, so Kira can do that in native language. That just really helps the whole communication piece. So yeah, Kira understands the product and is probably as much bought into marketplace as maybe I am. So she understands the challenges and she understands the problems that we're trying to solve. So but yeah, it's under guidance in like I say, in certain cases, but no, product ownership remains within booking.com.
Understood. I think that brings us to a nice close, literally, as we roll into 12. And I really thank you to Chris, thanks to Kira, to Ulyana, Paul, everyone that's joined, and I suppose over the 150 odd people that joined us online for our first virtual event, of which we'll be running a series of these. So please look out in the future. In addition to that, we'll be following up as well to get your feedback, to also share some content off the back of today. And I appreciate we've rolled over the allotted time, but I appreciate everyone staying on and some very useful questions and answers as well. So thanks again for everyone's time, and enjoy the rest of your day and stay safe. Thank you. Thanks everyone. Take care.